welcome to our event, My Life, My Business. Wish I was here with my co host, Shanaz, who is here. And today we're going to really expand on the many different wide ranging topics that we do share based on how engaged we are in our lives. So last week, Shana spoke about dealing with discomfort, embracing discomfort, rather trying to avoid it. And so basically, we've published an edited version of the talk, which is called "Flip the Switch on Pain." And so basically it's just riding the discomfort while feeling stuck, and Shanaz shares 6 strategies. So I'm going to invite you to listen either to the playback on Clubhouse or to listen to the podcast on YouTube. In any case, it seems like it is my turn this week, I'm sure. um, and I wanted to discuss, and it's really a favorite topic of mine, and it's come, and I must have discussed this from so many different perspectives already, but it's just looking at a book called "As a Man Thinketh" by James Allen. Now, as soon as I saw this, "As a Man Thinketh," I immediately thought about this scripture verse, Proverbs 23, verse 7, that says that for as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And the basic understanding of that verse is about how a person's true character is reflected in their inner thoughts, not just in their outward actions. So it serves as a reminder to be discerning of people's motives and to understand a person's true nature is reflected in their inner thoughts and intentions. So, which therefore, when I look at what this book is all about, as a man thinketh, it's really a classical philosophical work, that really explores the power of thought in shaping one's character, circumstances, as well as destiny. It also emphasizes the idea that our thoughts are primary factors influencing our lives. So, pretty much aligned to the scripture verse. And so, in general, this book really promotes the idea that personal transformation and successes come from within, shaped by the thoughts we nurture daily. It serves as motivational guide to take control of one's thinking to create a better, more fulfilling life. So, and that is, just as a reminder, is the title is "As a Man Thinketh" by James Allen. So, let me just kind of give an overview, sort of more point overview, and then maybe unpack a few as we go along. So the first thing is, that he deals with is that thoughts shape character. Interestingly enough, now he argues that a person becomes what they think about. So positive, virtuous thoughts lead to a noble and fulfilling life, while negative, destructive thoughts lead to failure and misery. Our character is the sum of our thoughts. Secondly, thoughts affect circumstances. Now, he emphasizes that external circumstances are often a reflection of our inner mental state. Positive thinking lead to positive outcomes, while negative thinking can attract difficulties. Although not all external factors are controllable, our reactions to them are really determined by our mindset. Then, number 3, he deals with the power of mindset. And he discusses how mental habits and attitudes determine success, health, and well being. People who cultivate self discipline, purpose, and moral clarity are more likely to achieve their goals and live harmonious lives. Which leads into, taking responsibility that affects our personal growth. So the core message is personal responsibility. He emphasizes that individuals have control over their thoughts, right? And therefore their destiny. By mastering one's thoughts, a person can rise above hardships and reach higher levels of personal development. So he also explores the connection between thought and physical well being. A calm, purposeful mind fosters a healthy body, while anxiety, stress, and negative thoughts can manifest in illness. So I'm going to just see how far I can get as we unpack some of these. Now, dealing with the first point where thoughts shape character, David tells us that by mastering our thoughts, we can change our lives. And so each action that we perform is really an outgrowth of our thoughts. And the tool that I really like is based on core energy dynamics, and it it describes how our core thoughts lead to core feelings, emotions, which lead to core actions, core behavior, core outcomes. And so David tells us that attitude and action are very closely related. For example, someone who always seems to give up on projects or relationships and at the same time have a pretty pessimistic attitude. I'm sure you've seen this kind of a friend, a relative, or a colleague. Often, we don't like to associate ourselves with people who are pessimistic, but they say also misery loves company. So underachievers tend to disappoint themselves because they think very little of themselves to begin with. Now, if our thoughts shape our character, it's only logical that changing our thoughts will change our character too. And then, therefore, by changing our thoughts, which lead to how we feel about things, how we express ourselves about things, and therefore lead to outcomes. So, when we are consciously changing our thoughts, we impact on how we feel, which therefore impact on our behavior. Now, coming back to the example about the pessimistic people, is by changing their thoughts, pessimistic people might find they have a bit more to smile about. Now, you can obtain, this is something that David says, is that you can obtain divine perfection by weeding out useless or destructive thoughts and gain joy, strength, peace, and wisdom. And so my point would be is that yes, we can do this, but it requires um, a measure of consciousness, a measure of self-awareness, is that you kind of become aware of how you're thinking and you need to capture that thought. So by capturing the thought is one thing, but you have to get rid of the thought, right? You have to dispose of it. And so therefore he says, and by doing so, you can gain joy, strength, peace, and wisdom. And he says, unmanaged thoughts can make you into your own biggest obstacle, that negative attitudes literally have the power to destroy the things you cherish and you love. And I would say, for me, a real authority on this is really scripture, and it's particularly the New Testament that says in Philippians 4, verse 8, this is a call to action for us all. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, focus on what is true. Whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things, right? Let's not dwell on the negative things of this world, things that are going wrong, and if you're truly South African, think about all the corruption and etc. We're not saying put your heads in your head in the sand, like an ostrich here. But the point is, train your mind to focus on those things that are constructive, that builds rather than break down. And building what exactly, you might ask me? Well, build your energy level, building the way you feel about life, really reinforcing a positive outlook on life. And I see Shanaz is asking quite a few questions. Shanaz, you're gonna come up with these. You're gonna ask these questions when I'm done. Uh, but unpacking, therefore, also, where he says that thoughts affect circumstances. As he makes an interesting, assertion, is that the world we live in doesn't just shape us; we shape it too. So let me say that again, because I paused there while I'm thinking and internalizing this. The world we live in doesn't just shape us; we shape it too. Now, isn't that interesting? So we're not just the product of our environment. We also shape our environment. I mean, that's my take on it. And so, what does he mean by this? Is that, and it goes through this line of reasoning, and he says, blaming failure on external factors is something we are all guilty of, and it might make us feel better, but it only sets us back. So, our circumstances, that is, all those external factors that impact our lives, are closely linked to our character. And it's all too easy to think that our experiences and our living conditions shape who we are. But the truth is, we shape our world just as much as it shapes us. Our character has considerable influence over what kinds of situations we end up in. So, for example, so maybe you can think about this one, Shanaz. So, if you end up in jail, it's not because the outside world or fate brought you there. Rather, the thoughts and attitudes you had about the outside world led you to the very situations that got you into trouble, for example. And just some random example is a traffic officer pulls you off the road for speeding, and you decide that because your objective is to, you're in such a hurry as to arrive at your destination on time, and it's so pressing and it's such high priority. Yes, he is American. And but this example is very much South African, though. Is and There's a classic phrase in South Africa that you need to interpret that says, for a cold drink you can go, otherwise you copping a fine, depending on how fast you were traveling, between maybe 500 rand to 1,000 rand. So. Um, for a cold drink, it doesn't literally mean a cold drink. It just means, well, for a small amount of money, he'll let you go free. So you decide, in your wisdom, to pay the cold drink money, and let's just call it what it is, the bribe. Unbeknownst to you, this thing has all been set up. There's somebody just waiting around the corner, another police officer, and you are caught in the act of offering a traffic officer or paying a bribe, and you end up being fined, and you end up being carted off and charged, and you might spend a few hours or a night in jail. Now, you've made some decisions that brought you to that point of being charged and finding yourself maybe sleeping the night in jail. So this is what he's saying, is that you can't say that everything is fate. Whatever happened needed to happen, and you had no control of it. Their decision in the example, right, brought you to that point where you broke the law, and therefore you were being charged. And there you shape the situation for sure. Now, of course, it's not always clear whether character or circumstances exert more influence on any given situation. So people with hearts of gold also can face terrible adversity, of course. And people that are greedy and dishonest also lead satisfied lives surrounded by wealth and admirers. And the point is just, therefore, that you cannot now deduce this, is that impossible to deduce that someone's character, you can't deduce somebody's character from their circumstances. That is not what he's saying. But you can shape your circumstances by the decisions you make, right? So that's the thoughts that affecting circumstances. And then the third one is the power of mindset. And here he unpacks this point, is that we are solely responsible for our ability to succeed. And he talks about so dream big. All right. So that kind of, as somebody who is an enthusiastic visionary, loves that kind of thinking. So if we think we are being victimized, we're bound to feel and act like victims and continue to be oppressed. So, yet, if we don't let ourselves feel like victims, it's harder for others to make us their victims. Therefore, it's crucial that we understand that our ability to free ourselves lies in our own hands. So, no matter the circumstances we face, we should stay true to our values and our ideals. Our highest aspirations, our dreams, are what gives us the impetus to turn our goals into achievements. Now, if you master your thoughts, thereby changing your character, and your circumstances for the better. And obviously, broadly speaking, the character part, the aspect of the character that he's talking about is basically outlook. Are you pessimistic or optimistic? Now, it's interesting. Is it, are we therefore talking about personality rather than character? Maybe that's a real conversation to try and unpack next time. But he's saying, to start again, is that if you master your thoughts, thereby changing your character and your circumstances for the better, and if you can direct your thoughts to all that you wish to achieve and open your thoughts to the dreams that inspire you, then you'll discover that life itself has a new quality. And therefore, what does he talk about? Serenity. We achieve serenity in our lives. It means it is the mark of someone who has learned to live and live well with their thoughts. It takes time to get there, but there's no doubt that it's worth it. So when I think about this, the way we feel resonates with what we think, right? And therefore, when we feel a certain way, as to kind of assess what it is we are thinking. Now, very much in our thinking lies our belief systems. Now, some of those belief systems, if they prevent you from pursuing and achieving success, those are limiting beliefs. But what are the beliefs that really support your progress to success? Is one of the things that he talks about is how our thoughts impacts our bodies too. He says, and Shanaz, this will be interesting to see what you feel about this. He says unhappy thoughts have a slew of unfortunate side effects. It has you have a higher heart rate, poorer sleep, headaches, and yes, wrinkles from all that frowning. So frowning is obviously a reaction to what you are thinking, especially if it's negative. And I would just say, when I saw this, I thought to myself, well, is this man telling us that by having happier thoughts, we reduce wrinkles and then we can save a budget on Botox, for example? Not not spending so much time on correcting something that comes from our thoughts. And on the other hand, thinking thoughts of joy, lightness, and energy are powerful enough to make us feel happier and younger too. So if you want to feel better about your body, try directing your thoughts towards feeling better altogether. Focusing your thoughts is crucial if you want to achieve any sort of goals. And therefore, to come to the end of this conversation, let go of any thoughts that distract you from your goal. If you notice that a certain thought is standing in the way of your purpose by, say, making you afraid, pessimistic, or uncertain, it's got to go. And Shanaz, just this last question is, he's not saying that at all. He's not saying that people are poor because they are not thinking correctly as per se, but you have made decisions or you have not made decisions. It is, think about all of that. So if some people start out as poor, do they stay poor necessarily? So it's a big conversation. He's just saying, and that's why I tapped right straight back into, is how we process the world, how we think about the world, what our core motivations are. These are the types of things that drive how we show up, for example. So if there is anything that stands in our way, that takes away from our purpose, we got to ask ourselves, like, for example, when it comes to our circumstances, is what have I contributed to my circumstances? So yes, I'm not talking about the broader thing. I'm talking about, what is it that I have control over? If you don't have control over your circumstances, is if you find yourself in poverty, you found yourself there, how you deal with that poverty surely must be up to you. So um, this is his point, is basically, you need to think a certain way. And how do you think? And everybody is capable of thinking either pessimistic thoughts or optimistic thoughts. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I'd really love to hear what you got to say.
I do not agree with all of his things that he says. I think that inherently underlying his assumptions are that people can control all their assumptions. And when I'm thinking of poverty, you cannot think your happy thoughts or your way out of poverty. And I think that he's basing the fact, sometimes we do need to look at who these writers are, and we do need to think of their perceptions. He is assuming that everyone starts at the same place. When we know in society, when we think of power and oppression, we all start at different levels. So often I find Americans believe in meritocracy, but meritocracy cannot exist when the playing field for individuals are different. And the playing fields historically, in when we think of the continent, when we think of South Africa, is different. Um, you you inherit wealth in the same way, and I'm not saying that poor people cannot, become successful, but what I am saying is that there is a limit to thinking happy thoughts. And and girls, no matter, there are some people that no matter how positive they are, and no matter how can I say, focused and goal orientated they are, um if you look at our unemployment situation, if you look at people's socioeconomic conditions, then you cannot say, then that's ultimately what he's aiming at. He's aiming at the fact that if you are poor, it's because you're not thinking properly, literally. And I think that too, and I think that he's saying it. I'm not saying that. I think that the context needs to be considered, and the American context is slightly different to the South African context. But I also know Black Americans who disagree with him. They are largely overrepresented in the criminal system, in poverty, in all of those circumstances. So I think that there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance between thinking around what you are in control of and what circumstances you are not in control of. And there's a lot of people who are in poverty not because they didn't think happy thoughts, and they goal and they goal not goal orientated. So I think I have a problem inherent in some of his philosophy and perceptions.
We've run out of time. It's like, listen, it's a wonderful debate to have. I'm going to say this, that you are not, if you find yourself in poverty, right, because of circumstance, or you find, like, for example, when you think about what the Griffin Foundation does and focuses on youth unemployment, we're not saying to that particular individual, hey, you caused your circumstances. What we are saying to this particular individual is how you think about these circumstances and how you get beyond them. Now, do you have a healthy hand up and a healthy system that supports all of this? No, but the key would be is, and it's actually something that was said by the UCT student that interned here, was we need to get to the individual before they get to grade 12, before, so that when they make decisions concerning the subject choices and those kind of, it gives more meaning to and more alignment to where it is they end up, and not, I'm finished with my grade 12 and now I need a job. So when we get in there, we try and inspire a picture of what an alternative future looks like, right? And the reason we do that is like, yes, these are the limitations, this is your current reality, but what are you going to do to overcome them, and to think creatively around that. And it's not merely survival. Now, I do know that somebody conducted a research on happiness and said happiness has got to do with um, shifting yourself out of mere survival. That's why some of the things we do, and you've heard me say this before, is quite critically is your level of poverty is such that because you're living way below the breadline and what we know as a poverty threshold, you are unable to shift your focus towards aspirational thinking, because your focus is on what am I going to do to survive here. And what they did is they came up with this level, and we converted this income threshold to 17,500 per household. That's where we get to, so that when that is achieved, you're able to lift up your head and start thinking through aspirational things. And it's a deep topic. So here is my personal belief as a South African, in a South African context. I do believe that if you have a desire to shift something in your circumstances, you got to look at what is it that you have been gifted with, naturally gifted with, to shift yourself out of those circumstances. And there is a primary sort of way of thinking there. Now, David has got this, and in fact, I agree with you in terms of what he's saying is that you it's not the art of positive thinking where you just wish yourself out of the thing without actually actively taking the kinds of steps that provides the opportunities for you to shift out of your current circumstances. But anyway, that's where my passion comes from as well. So I passionately believe that when you take agency over your life and decide that you're going to make different decisions. Now, if you feel you can't make those decisions, it's a different story, of course. But if you are able to inspire at least the pursuit of that, I think you begin to impact the person's life, their family, and community as a result.
I think it's a very interesting topic and we can deal with it at another time.
Yes, yes, we have. No, but
Okay.
listen, what I'm saying is that there's many different ways of thinking about this, but it is about thinking about this. Even having this conversation, I think the debate is so important. It needs to be educational, right? It's not just there's no silver bullet to what I personally think, but I offered this man's book as a way of having a conversation. So, but anyway, thank you so
Okay.
much. I hope you come up with a sequel to this conversation and bring us a different perspective. And that's our learning. So, thank you, Shanaz. Thank you, Julia, for being here. So, so sorry, you're making me laugh there, Shanaz. So, until next week. Have a fantastic week. Remember, what are the motivations in your heart? You know what they are. Do they support where you want to be or don't they? Just be aware and practice. And by the way, it does make perfect. So until next week, we will chat again. Bye for now.
Bye.